BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Hello, I'm Amy Canavan and this is the Scottish Football Podcast. It's Thursday the 2nd of January and in this episode we're focusing on the first Old Firm derby of 2025.
There's only one way forward and that's working hard to make things better and that players show personality and stand up in the moments when it's difficult, when they make mistakes, for the next game to be better and to be brave and to be strong.
We go with the mindset that we have in every single game that we play, not just Rangers, whether it's St Johnstone, whoever, we go to win the game. They're always tough games, they're always real challenging games there, but we've done very, very well there.
All eyes are on Glasgow as Rangers and Celtic meet for the third time this season, and after 9 goals and no shortage of drama in the previous 2 meetings, it promises to be typically action-packed.
Callum McGregor to the edge of the penalty area, he's looking up at the goal, oh that is magnificent! He came at the edge of the box and gets his shot away, breaks it by Rami on the rebound, and he slots it home! Maida's got it in his stride, he's in on Butland, and he scores! Kearney bends it in, goal, equaliser! Danilo!
The Scottish Football Podcast.
Joining me to delve into the big one, which is always the big one, is former Rangers striker Ross McCormack and former Celtic captain Jackie McNamara. How are you both, guys? I'm glad to say that our listeners, I can provide them with the comfort of knowing that you are very much in separate rooms right now and it's not like an episode of Gladiators. But how are you both?
Good, thank you.
All good, ready to go. Fantastic. There is plenty to get into with Jackie and Ross, and we'll also hear from Rangers review editor Joshua Barrie. I should also point out, though, that we are recording this a couple of days before the 2nd because we're going to be knee-deep in Bucks Fizz in a few days' time. Now, before we get into these things fully, though, I've got a quick quiz question for you if you're up for it. I'll give you the question now, and you both can give me your answers at the end, or your attempts at the end of the episode. Right, here we go. Rangers' James Tavernier and Celtic's Kyogo Furuhashi both have 6 goals in League Old Firm derbies. Since the Scottish Premiership began in 2013, only one player has netted more times in this fixture in the division. Can you name him? I've got a way, again, for our audio listeners. Neither of our 2 guests look too convincing right now, so we'll definitely come back to that one at the end. Right, but there is other action as well outside of the Old Firm derby. There's a full card of fixtures taking place. There's Aberdeen Ross County, Hearts Motherwell, Kilmarnock St Mirren, St Johnstone Hibs, and a tasty Dundee derby at Dens. For all the build-up and live coverage of those games, tune in to Sports Sound on BBC Radio Scotland with the programme on air from 2. But as I did mention, this episode of the Scottish Football Podcast is a sole focus on Rangers against Celtic. 3 o'clock kickoff at Ibrox. So let's get into it. Jackie, you have featured in plenty of these games. The days coming into it as everything is building up, the media attention's building up, the fans are trying to stop you in the shops. How are you feeling at this time?
Yeah, I think you just try to stay normal. I think the build-up, it all started as soon as the final whistle against St Johnstone, making sure everybody's fit, not suspended, and, all rested up for Thursday. But obviously the hype starts and it's more the outside stuff, than the inside. Try and keep everything as normal as you can get into these games. But I think from Celtic's point of view, it can be more a relaxed one if you can get that for the derby. Having a good cushion going into it, you can afford to lose it. Although the last thing they would be thinking about, the pressure's on Rangers to win the game. They have to win, which suits Celtic for them to come out. They've got pace that they've shown in the last number of games that they can hurt them on the attack. So Rangers, did they come out all gun blazing, rested a few players at the start of the Motherwell game. So as I said, the pressure's on them to come and take the game to Celtic at home with their home fans.
Jackie mentions, Ross, that it sort of starts the minute that the last game finishes. It's all about coming out of that as unscathed as possible. But throughout the 90 minutes off that, the previous game, whatever game it may be, how difficult is it? I know everyone says taking it game by game, but to not have that little inkling or that little eye on that Old Firm derby.
As Jackie was saying there, you've got to keep your build up to every game as normal as possible. Listen, everyone outside, even though they'll say, "Oh, Motherwell was the most important game. It's the next game or whatever," but everyone's eyes would still have been on the Old Firm game for sure. Now that's done with, it now becomes an even bigger game for Rangers. It is massive. I was laughing there when Jackie said they've got a good cushion. I think they've got the full sofa, Celtic. Well, that's far ahead, honestly. It's unthinkable that Rangers now go into that game and get beat. So it's a massive game. It's been built up even more now because of Rangers' last two results. So it's going to be interesting to see how the manager plays it.
That's just it. And again, it's the sort of the $1 million question. But how does Philippe Clement attack this game? Because even with a win, and we'll speak to Joshua Barrie in a little bit as well, but even with a win, it's not necessarily saying that is Rangers' title race or title fight back on. What can he hope for? What is the best possible outcome for him for this, Ross?
To win. Like you said, even if they win, listen, I think the league's finished. I think it has been for a while, to be honest. But it'll afford them breathing space. Because I tell you what, if he doesn't win or they lose, it's going to be a very nervous couple of days. I don't see how it can continue. Now they've got certain staff members and what have you upstairs in the door and that, I think a decision will be coming very soon. And like I say, this game on Thursday, if it doesn't go Rangers' way, I think there's only one way that conversation's going to go.
How much pressure does that put on Celtic as well, though, Jackie? Because it's, I think everyone certainly right now, as we say, we're recording this a few days in advance, but it's all very much just pointing in the direction, the narrative that it's Celtic shit again and they're going to stretch their lead. But it is still ultimately going to Ibrox, and no matter that they have, Celtic have been scoring 4 goals in both of their last 2 games, does that add to it, the fact that Rangers are going through this little stumbling bit, or does it make it harder?
Obviously, Rangers will be hurting for the Motherwell game. The fact that they came back gives them a little bit of a lift. But I just think no matter what team Rangers put out, I just think Celtic at the moment are just far too strong for them. Brendan's record in these fixtures are incredible as well. He's got a fantastic record, and there'll be no surprise that he'll keep the players calm and make sure they keep to their game plan. That will be his message. They all trust in his philosophy, the way he wants to play. Even when he's bringing players in and out, he'll make 1 or 2 changes, bringing boys like Luke McCowan in that can come in, step into the fixture, and there's no change to the team, there's no change to the system. Everybody knows their jobs. And Rangers, on the other hand, you don't know what system they're going to play, you don't know what personnel they're going to play. It's a lot of times it's kind of guesswork to see what he's going to get from certain individuals. But as I said, I thought Rangers were okay in the final.
Right to the right hand side, the cross comes in. Diamonde on the turn, goal! Diamonde squeezes it past Michael into the bottom left corner, and this topsy-turvy seesaw battle in Glasgow South Side has just taken another turn.
There wasn't a lot in the match. Obviously, going to penalties tells you that. But I just think Rangers have to win it. They have to go into the game to try and win the match, which I think suits Celtic down to a T, because they've got pace, especially the way the Rangers are at the back, that they can exploit that.
In stark comparison to Rogers, Clement does not have that record. He's yet to get by Celtic, yet to pick up a win. How much does that play on the players' mind, if at all, Ross, that your manager hasn't quite managed to, come up with that special concoction yet to be able to get one over your biggest rivals? Does that come into anything, or when the club are in such a period as they are right now, is it every little thing does matter?
I don't think they'll be thinking about the manager at all, because if the manager hasn't won an X amount of games, then neither has the players, and that's what they'll be thinking about. I think they'll be nervous. I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing that there's no Celtic fans at the game, because Rangers players will probably hear every word of abuse that they get if it doesn't start well for them. So I don't know with that if it's going to be a good thing or a bad thing. But I don't think the players will be thinking about the manager. The players will just be doing their best. By the way, like they have been doing the last few games as well, because you don't go out to lose football matches or draw football matches. Nothing at all. They've gave their best. They just weren't good enough. And we'll do the same on Thursday. But like Jackie was alluding to there, it's hard to see any other outcome at the minute. Celtic are just such a well-oiled machine. Players coming in and just slip straight into the team. There's no change in their philosophy or who they are or anything like that. Whereas you take one player out the Rangers team or two players out, no one knows what's going to happen.
Who's the key men on Thursday for Celtic, Jackie? You mentioned that squad. Ross calls it a well-oiled machine. You alluded to the pace. Everyone always looks at the Maeda Tavernier battle.
Back to Johnston, out to Bernardo Vaiacu, now back to Johnston. He's at the byline, he pulls it back, and then it goes! This one will count! Daisen Maeda rolls it home! It was all down this right-hand side. Rangers could not prevent it. Coming into the box, it went behind Kyogo, but Maeda was there to ram it home. And Celtic do make the breakthrough in the first derby of the season.
Who's going to be the key men for Brendan Rodgers' side?
Always the spine of the team. Starts with the goalie. Schmeichel's been a brilliant signing. Carter Vickers in front of him. Then you get Callum McGregor, makes him tick. He starts things off and it builds it into the wee areas. And then Kyogo leading the line. Maeda does a fantastic job for the team in pushing Tavernier back. And that's the areas that I feel that Celtic can hurt them in between the full backs and the centre backs, which have caused them problems before. So, I just think through the spine, the Celtics team is so much stronger, and that's what's given them so much joy this year.
We spoke on a previous podcast, Ross, about Rangers ringing in, Philippe Clement ringing in all those changes against Motherwell. A little bit of criticism for that. Who do you expect to see come back in? Do you expect to see the players that were rested? Czerny, Eagleman, will they be coming in, do you reckon?
I think the three in the forward areas, Hadji was not well apparently, so if he's fit, I think he comes in, and then you've got Eagleman who comes in, Czerny comes in, and listen, they do make Rangers a much better team, much more dangerous, much more potent, so they need to be right at it, because, like I said, if that game doesn't start well for Rangers, they've got 50,000 of their own fans at Ibrox. They're going to know about it.
It's sure to be a loud one, as always. I think it's fair to say that it hasn't been the happiest of festive periods for Philippe Clement. I think a few at Ibrox will be letting that be known. To find out a little bit more about the mood around Ibrox going into the derby, I've been catching up with Joshua Barrie, editor of the Rangers Review. Joshua Barrie from the Rangers Review, thanks very much for joining us. Let's get right into it, the nitty-gritty. What is the mood among Rangers fans right now, heading into this Old Firm? I imagine if I asked you this question perhaps 2-3 weeks ago, it would have been a very, very different answer. But right now, where are the fans at?
Yeah, I think 2 or 3 weeks ago it had the potential to be really different. After the kind of Kilmarnock and Aberdeen games a couple of months ago, you looked at it and you thought, Clement, really from an optics, from a getting supporters on side point of view, you need to basically be point perfect up until one of these 2 Old Firm games, the League Cup final and the game that we're discussing just now. Point perfect up until then, and then get a big victory. So I think up until a couple of weeks ago, Rangers were unlucky in the League Cup final. Obviously, the decision that was spoken about for a long time rightly after played into that as well. But these 2 games totally changed the mood, because you can only get away with so many of these results before they become a pattern. And Rangers had been good for a couple of months up until that point, but they hadn't been good the couple of months prior. So I'd say the mood is, in all honesty, if you're surveying it, it's apathetic at the moment. And that before a couple of weeks ago, there would have been a muted conversation. Can Rangers maybe get this down to 6 points? Can they make it interesting? Can Clement finally break his duck in this fixture? Now you're looking at it and thinking, will it be 17 points by January 2nd? And from what could be, I think, is understandably now an angry and a pessimistic view.
Where has this drop came from? Because there was that turn, there was the Spurs game, there was as you mentioned, the performance in the League Cup final brought about a lot of pleasure, but it's not only the results in the last 2 games, it's very much been the performance as well. Where's the drop been?
Well, if we speak in terms of away from home, it's kind of been like that all season. So Rangers, we're speaking in December, Rangers have scored 9 goals away from home. We're speaking just after, obviously, their most recent game. So I don't know the exact up-to-date numbers, but if you look at their expected goals difference away from home, even compared to the Europa League, in the Europa League, their expected goal difference is the best in the competition away from home. And it's, I think, 1.35. And in the league, it's Scottish Premiership's like 0.4, 0.5. So I think in all honesty, it's results have caught up with performances. And have Rangers been slightly unfortunate in some games? Yes. But I don't think you could watch their away games this season and say that they haven't deserved what they've got, really. So the Europe, they've been pretty consistently good. Clement's unbeaten away from home with Rangers in European competition. The difficulty is Europe doesn't happen that often. People want to see a consistent, attractive, if it's not attractive, winning formula. When you don't have either of those two components, I think what you've actually seen over the last couple of weeks is a few questionable decisions in terms of team selection, but also just a continuation of Rangers' form away from home, which hasn't been good enough all season and has really caught up with them kind of over the Christmas period.
So the Old Firm is at Ibrox, back in home comforts. How much pressure is on Philippe Clement to get something? What is deemed a something at this stage?
It's a really good question, because it's a strange thing to say that a win doesn't matter, because a win obviously does. But in a way, if you're looking at the optics at the moment, a win would take Rangers back to 11 points. And is there a belief that they can go and put in a consistent run? They've not been able to do it throughout the entirety of the season. I think it's always important to caveat this season has been full of difficulties for them. Starting the season at Hampden, they've had to do a lot of work on the squad / the wage bill. All that can be held in the same hand as the fact that when you are where Rangers are in the league, which is still financially far out and ahead of the majority of teams, the product needs to be better. There needs to be more of a, not completely linear, but a bit more of a linear trajectory as to what's happening. So I think it's 6 games that Clement's had without an Old Firm victory. Would we be having a different conversation if penalties had went the other way around a couple of weeks ago? Yes, maybe so, but they didn't. And the last 2 away games, it's not as if these have been 2 performances where Rangers have spent all the time in the opposition half and they've been really unlucky. I think it's been 2 games where there's been elements of misfortune, but you've actually had 2 games where Rangers have equalised at a certain juncture and then not even kind of been able to push on and create many chances. Against Motherwell, the game went 2-2 on 68 minutes, I think, and didn't have much of an opportunity in front of goal after that. So does a win in an Old Firm game matter? Of course it does, it always does. But these 2 results that we're speaking on the back of have been so damaging, because Clement, I think, needed to be point perfect, really in the eyes of supporters, before he then went and got a significant result in one of these 2 Old Firm fixtures.
What can he do then, just as we start to wrap this up? What can he do to change the narrative? Is it a positive January transfer window? Is it a something against Celtic? What can he do to perhaps win back what is perhaps a support with a bit of apathy?
I think he needed to win these 2 games. Again, an Old Firm, will the Old Firm matter, and will it in isolation, will it just be about the Old Firm when it happens? Yes, but Rangers are 14 points behind, and what is it, 18 games we've played in the Scottish Premiership, so it's not as if we're talking about, if you finish 14 points behind at the end of the season, you're probably saying that's not great, that's not good enough. What I think has kind of betrayed Clement since March, when Rangers lost at home to Motherwell, after they had those results against Kilmarnock and Hearts, is they've never really been able to build momentum. And when you're in the position that they've been, which is that you're not somewhere but you're trying to get somewhere, you need momentum. And they've had results in amongst that period that have been good. They've had performances that have been good, but they've not been able to build domestic momentum. So is it about the big games? Does a Rangers manager need to show he can beat Celtic? Of course, because Clement hasn't done that up until this point. But Rangers need to be a far better team away from home than they have been in the frustration, apathy, anger, disenfranchisement. Call it what you will. It's strong, and that which lingers after these games against St Mirren and Motherwell, I think, answering honestly, it would take a lot more than 1 Old Firm result to get past that.
The Scottish Football Podcast from BBC Sports Scotland.
Rangers Review editor Joshua Barrie there. Just before we wrap up, guys, it is the festive time and everyone pulls out these quizzes and these games that nobody can be bothered with. But I am putting on my football da hat and asking that question that I did, and I'm going to provide you with the answer. I'll remind you of it. Rangers' James Tavernier and Celtic's Kyogo Furuhashi both have 6 goals in League Old Firm derbies since the Scottish Premiership began in 2013. Only 1 player has netted more times in this fixture in the division. Can you name him, Jackie McNamara?
Is it Dembele?
It's not Dembele. It's not Moussa Dembele. Ross, be honest, was that your shout?
No, mine was his mate, who now plays with I think he's at Leicester now, is he? Is it Edward?
It is Odsonne Edouard. It was one or other, Jackie, wasn't it? It was one or other. 7 goals for Odsonne Edouard. Well done, Ross. Well done. Happy days. Right, that is all we've got time for. My many thanks do go to Ross, Jackie and Joshua Barrie, and thank you for listening. Remember, Sports Sound is on BBC Radio Scotland from 2 o'clock with all the live action, and Sports Scene will have all the highlights this evening, and we're here with new episodes of the Scottish Football Podcast bright and early every day, so to make sure you don't miss out, follow or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Until next time, bye-bye.
Sir Alex Ferguson is the most successful British manager of all time.
Nobody is above him or this football club.
So how did an apprentice toolmaker from Glasgow become one of the most iconic figures in sporting history?
His strength of character, his determination, the fight in him.
He can be persuasive, he can be charming, he can be frightening.
I'm Kelly Cates, and this is Sporting Giants Sir Alex Ferguson.
I didn't want to feel, I couldn't feel.
Listen on BBC Sounds.